College is a wild ride for young adults, and their mental health often suffers. This podcast addresses the inner battles many college students struggle with. You're listening to Normalize It Forward, where we have raw, unfiltered conversations about young people's biggest mental health problems, how to handle them, and how to achieve a more resilient mind. Time to get rid of those heavy burdens and focus more on self-love and care. Here is your host, Marc Lehman.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Normalize It Forward. My name is Marc Lehman, and this is the podcast that we talk openly about mental health and wellness. Today, we are welcoming in Coach Shannon ONeil. Shannon, welcome. We are joined by Shannon. She is from the IMG Academy lacrosse program with 15 years of experience leading young women to success on and off the lacrosse field at the high school and collegiate level. Shannon is a native of Newburgh, New York. She attended Villanova and became a two-time All-American and team captain there. She is still second in Villanova's all-time women's lacrosse record books for total career points, assists, and ground balls. Awesome. Shannon currently leads the girls lacrosse program at IMG Academy in Florida. In her first years at IMG, the program size has almost doubled. And the national team has risen from being unranked to 40th in the country. The team is hoping to break the top 25 rankings this spring, but she didn't just move to Bradenton to win. Shannon's mission since day one has been to create the best female high school playing experience in the world for young women who love to compete. She credits the program's early success to two main factors: a persistent commitment to ensure her athletes have fun while chasing her biggest dreams, and relentless pursuits to create an environment where young women learn to genuinely root for one another. Shannon, thank you so much. Welcome.
Thanks so much for having me.
Of course, absolutely. So now that I've thoroughly screwed up your intro,
You're good. It's the worst part.
Yeah. Want to jump into the topic at hand. So mental health and wellness obviously has just incrementally grown, and as I'm sure your occupational path of coaching has you around young people all the time, you probably can't help but hear about and talk about and maybe even see some of the dramatic spikes in both depression, anxiety, and even other things on and off the field. Is that something that you've recognized over the years?
Yeah, we definitely have seen a spike. I had left the coaching world for a bit, came back into this world, and I would certainly say it's different nowadays. I can't quite figure out if, there's this awesome phenomenon that the younger generations, they're really comfortable talking about mental health. So I don't know if it's so much so that people are feeling more anxiety. I know there's studies that say there are, and I'm sure that is the case with the social media and that sort of thing. But I also I really think that kids are just really comfortable sharing some of that sometimes. And so it's pretty, that piece I think is really cool and really neat.
I agree. I think that's a really good positive spin on what's happened. And I totally agree. I mean, over the years, I've noticed that tremendously with young people, that there's just a comfort in this topic area. And certainly kids talking about therapy, kids talking about getting help, and kids coming to, people that are in their world that are trusted adults, like coaches, like assistant coaches, like physical therapists, like people around them, where they sort of look for that. They look for that ally and look for that conversation. So I think that's a really positive point, Shannon. I totally agree. I'm curious. I know as a coach, there's so much more to your job than practices and games. And, I'm curious, the phrase self-care gets thrown around a lot. And as a therapist, I talk about it a lot. When you think of sort of self-care for your athletes, what does self-care mean to you?
It's funny. We put into place last year, we put something new into place. It's called a Protect Your Peace Pass. So we actually physically give our kids tickets that are designed, to help them wake up in the morning and just say hey, today I'm not feeling this, right? And so we give them 2 passes a semester.
I love it.
Like this is what I self-care. It's like I think we're pretty good at, and coaches on the whole are getting good at identifying, hey, this kid might be struggling a little bit, and reaching out and being proactive. But I think there are days that are just harder and more difficult for some reason, whatever that reason might be. And so we actually here in our program, we developed these protect your peace passes that our kids have gotten pretty comfortable using those, which is great. That's the whole point of them.
Love that.
But that piece says to that piece says to them like, hey, you literally just have to text the coaches and say, hey, I'm using my protect your peace pass today.
Yep.
And there's no explanation. There's no questions. It could be the day before a game. It can be the day before a test, whatever that thing might be, that's causing them extra stress. And we give them a couple passes that way. So for me, like for our self-care stuff, that's one thing. The other things we've put into place I think are really helpful. Like we meet every day now. These kids are different. Like they do have anxiety. They're anxious about what's coming next a lot. And so I personally think it's just a theory that because they have access to so much information all the time, when they don't know something, like it really is anxiety inducing, right? And so we meet in a locker room every day, 15 minutes before practice starts, and we literally go through everything that's going to happen at practice. So they don't have to walk out to practice thinking, are we going to run today? Like, how much are we going to run? What are we going to do? So we'll go through, we'll draw up if we're doing new drills or something, we'll draw those up just to take some of that stuff off for them. So I think, for me personally, like I did come back into this world. I've got 14 nieces and nephews. And so I came back into this world because I had felt that shifting even in my own family. And I just thought like, hey, what can I do to give back? And so when we're here every day, we get up every day. I have 3 other full-time female coaching staff members, and we get up every day, and the whole focus of our planning is like, how do we make this a wonderful day for these kids? And so some of that is really focused on like, what is the best way for us to allow them self-care? And so those are some of the
I love that. Predictability. It's huge. It's huge. Yeah. It's, you made me think of 2 things. I was thinking of grade school, elementary school, when they'd put the schedule up on the board.
Yeah.
Good for young kids. They know what's coming, and I think that's true for older kids as well. I think it probably brings their anxiety down, kind of knowing what's coming. And then the second thing I thought of, and this is tough, and I'm curious your thoughts on this, is recruiting. Recruiting is a process that is anything but predictable, right? And you guys can kind of help them with like your half, but obviously the rest of the country in terms of where they're recruited is sort of a very unpredictable thing. I'm curious. I mean, that's a huge topic, but I'm curious, what's that like from your perspective?
It's crazy. It is definitely unpredictable. I would say for sure it's the biggest stress inducing year. So our recruiting year in lacrosse is after sophomore summer.
Okay.
So it's right now for about 12 of our kids. So it's been a lot. I will tell you, it is as stressful for the players as it is for the families. And so we do a lot of work just helping everybody kind of take a deep breath. The mantra we use a lot here is we don't get you recruited, you get you recruited, right? That's number one. So if people feel like they're empowered to actually like carve their own path, I think that's also really helpful for young women to understand. Like I'm not, nobody can make a phone call and just drop an offer in your lap, right? And this is such a wonderful time to be a female student athlete. Like the opportunities that our kids have these days are off the charts compared to even 2-3 years ago. So that's really neat. So we help them embrace like, hey, this is a wonderfully exciting time. Like you are getting opportunities that, you have not been able to get for years. And so that's really cool. But yeah, I think one, like helping young women or young athletes understand they own this piece, right? Like we can put you in the right positions, we can get you playing your best. But when you show up and you play in front of college coaches, like you have to deliver. And so you own that. And so that's a powerful thing, I think, for our kids. But it is not easy. Again, we talk about what we do, what we can control. So, and there's things we can't control, right? Like you can control how hard you're working. You can control a couple things, but some things you can't control, right? You can't control what a college coach looks for in that particular year, or whether they need your particular position for that particular year, and all of these sorts of things. So
I mean, it reminds me a lot of regular college admissions,
Yes.
when, sometimes for the first time, kids are getting rejections of schools they thought was a sure thing,
Yeah. Mhm.
and, I watch my own patients that I work with, they'll submit November 1st and they're just waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting.
Well, they should.
And, and there's literally nothing they can do at that point. They just have to wait.
Yep.
And and realize, okay, if I've done my job and I've put my apps out there, I'll get in. But one thing I see, and I'm curious your thoughts on this, is that a lot of young people, whether they're athletes or non-athletes, they kind of tie it to like future happiness,
Yeah.
so like if I don't get into the right school, somehow my life has changed.
Yeah, I think there's two things going on that we fight against all the time. I mean, for us, and it is very similar to the general college admissions, right? Having a really tight, small list, like you grew up saying, hey, I want to go here. I want to go
Yeah.
here. I want to go here. Like that is a real challenge in today's world, whether you're an athlete or not, because the opportunities are just slimmer. And honestly, like everybody has really good grades, right? And
That,
everybody, like that's kind of like where they're headed, right? I mean, but so I think that's one thing going on. Like, hey, can we get a broad list? Like, tell me not what schools you want to go to. Tell me what you want out of a school. Do you want to be in an urban area? Do you want to study business? Like what? Tell me those things, and we can get a list together that gives you an opportunity to be successful. I think that's number one. That's been helpful in that process. But the other thing, and you know this, obviously, but like my favorite quote is, and we talk about this a lot with our kids: comparison is a thief of joy, right? And there is like it's too easy now to compare consistently, like every day, waking up, seeing 15 commitments, seeing 20, oh, I'm better than her. I did this better than her. I went to a thing with her. We really try to help kids focus on their journey and their own timeline because it's intense for
yeah.
sure.
It's intense and it's individualized, right? So there's around 5,000 colleges out there, right? And one would think there'd be more than one, right school.
Right.
So I like how you said that, and I think that's really spot on of what do you want to get out of this experience? Because I think that their answer is probably something that can be applied to a lot of different schools, a lot of different school settings.
Yeah, I think it really shifts the conversation, and we're working on that here because I think the norm is to go out and say, okay, what are your top 10 schools? We do it in admissions and we do it for athletes. And it's like, okay, but really you don't make the decision, right? Like the college coach makes the decision, the admissions office makes the decision. So you don't really get to just say where you want to go and get one of those opportunities, right? So we work on that a lot. And I think for a lot of our kids these days, just because of, I don't know, lots of things you probably know better than I do, but this may be their first disappointment.
Right.
And for their families, this might be the first disappointment they need to endure for their child. And, if you're a parent, you understand that most parents really mean well. Like it is not, it's a visceral reaction to watch your child hurt. And
Absolutely.
so that's really what's happening. You'll hear people in sports talk about the parents this, the parents are crazy, the parents are this. And if you're a parent yourself of an athlete or a college age student, you realize like really they're just hurting for their child and they don't have control over the outcome either. And
Right.
that's really hard for parents to get in line with. It's hard.
Yeah, yeah. And I think along those lines, Shannon, we so often we talk about, things like anxiety and depression, and kind of the opposite of unhappiness is happiness, right? And so what's going to make their child happy, what they think is going to make their child happy is what they're pushing for, which makes total sense.
Right.
Total sense. So I think that, along those lines, one of the things that I find myself talking a lot about in this podcast is, how to make environments successful.
Mhm.
What is it that a young person needs to do? Staff can offer certain things like you were just talking about before, but not every student, takes it upon themselves to use those things. But what is it that so like let's put ourselves in their shoes for a minute, right?
Yeah.
So we're a high level athlete. We go to IMG Academy. We have great staff around us. What is it that we need to do as an athlete as a teen, as a high school athlete, to be able to manage our own stress levels? What comes to mind? What sorts of things would you say they should do?
I think the hardest thing is, and we're reminding our kids all the time, like, this is actually the fun part, like whether you have, when you're at IMG, you were at school with 1,500 teenagers that are chasing their dreams, right? And so it doesn't mean they're perfect. It doesn't mean they're perfect athletes. It just means they've got a goal and they're chasing it, which is really cool, right? When you walk on this campus, you can feel that energy, which is nice. It gives you that energy as well. But the thing I'm always kind of reminding our kids about in particular is like, this is actually supposed to be fun. Like if you're showing up if you're at IMG and you're coming to practice and you're dreading it, and you're saying, hey, we should be somewhere else. Like that's not actually what it's supposed to feel like. So for us, like when you come to one of our practices, you will see my best players all the way down to my players that need the most development. You will see them dancing, you will see them singing in line, you will see them
Nice.
chit-chatting, laughing, because that's the energy that we bring as a coaching staff, because I think that kids are at their peak performance and successful when they're having fun. And so somewhere along the way, we've kind of stripped that from them and we've made this a business.
Mm,
And sports at 16 and 15 and 17 years old, that's not a business,
right.
right? Like you're supposed to be making friendships, building relationships, like getting coaching relationships that you'll have for a lifetime, like all the things that we had growing up. So, it's funny on some of my we do a lot of surveying here at IMG, and some of my earliest comments, my first year here, my second year here, the kids would write, she's great, but she's kind of old school. Like, yeah, and I would say, yeah, I'm old school, right? I believe in fundamentals. I believe this should be fun, and I believe you should have your best friends on the team. Like that, those are the three things. So
Mhm.
here, like I am super competitive. You probably know I have four older brothers, so I want to win as much as anyone else, but that's not the pinnacle of where we're headed right now. Like what we talk about here is you root for each other, like
Yep.
everywhere, right? So I think for an athlete to be successful, even at the next level, and they just don't know this yet, you have to be able to genuinely be a great teammate. You
Yeah.
have to understand the power of, right? Like how powerful is it for a team and a group of young women to know that they actually have 39, 40 kids that want what's best for them? Like that's
Right.
crazy. And
It's
so
awesome.
that's what we focus on here. And so we don't always get it right, and the kids don't always get it right. But I think at the end of the day, that's what we're striving for every single day. Like, can you root for each other genuinely on the field, in the classroom, online, in your Snapchat, like wherever that might be? And I think that helps kids be successful, honestly.
Such a positive vibe. I mean, I think the other piece that probably doesn't get talked about much is this is temporary, right? Like athletics is not a forever thing.
Mhm.
And having coached, my son and over the years and been around sports, I mean, I feel like athletics mimics life
Yeah,
so often, right? Like you think about in adulthood, how many teams do you work on, right?
all
All
day.
right, all day.
Yeah.
And so to be a good teammate, whether you're on an actual team, an athletic team, or as an adult on some other type of team, I think you're teaching these kids how to do that and the importance and the value of that, which is huge, Shannon. It's huge.
Yeah, I think, it's actually honestly it's what gets me up in the morning, is why I came here. But I also we are having kids in the third grade worried about where they're going to go to college or where they're going to play in college. And it's like we're missing all of the development as a human because we're so focused on that. I mean, we're giving up family vacations for 11 years so that kids can go play college sports. You don't have to do that. So that's the other thing we do with our families here. It's like, hey, yes, there's important pieces to the puzzle. You have to play club in the summer. It's a big recruiting tool, all of the things. But guess what? You can go to the beach for 2 weeks. Like if,
Right.
so we're constantly like we're on the phone with our parents all the time. Like, do you think we should do? The parents will ask, do we think we should do XYZ? Like, oh, she didn't get into this thing. Great. Tell her congratulations. She didn't get into that thing. She gets a weekend off, like that's honestly how
Exactly.
I feel.
I love it.
And I think like my mission is to prove out that these girls can have fun, can take family vacations, and still can be elite athletes with all the opportunities that they would have had if they gave all of that stuff up. And I just know it from personal experience. You know, my son's an athlete, and we gave up a lot of vacations and a lot of time together, and I would do anything to get that back. Like you don't get those periods back. And so, I guess it's my mission to help families understand that they can reach their goals and still have like some fun along the way.
I love it. I mean, I think it's resisting that urge to be intense. And of
Yeah.
course, the urge to be intense just like quickly translates into anxiety and difficulties for kids,
Yeah.
which makes their production go down, not up. I was laughing because as you said that in third grade, I was like, I was learning the rules to Foursquare and
Yeah.
trying to
I
figure
was
out how
good
to
at that
get
game,
my
actually. I was really good at that game.
like I'm
Yeah.
in third grade, and boy, times have changed. Times have changed, and it's so, I think that in many ways you're such a good role model for these kids because number one, you've achieved it yourself. Number two, you give them positive messages for them to take with them because they're gonna have intense coaches, they're gonna have intense teammates. No matter what you say or do, that's gonna be there at some point for them. And those are kids that have to sort of decide, do I in fact embrace that intensity or am I able to really continue to enjoy the sport that I love while also enjoying life?
Right.
Right. Which is
It-
like,
yeah.
a nice balance. So I'm curious. I mean, you've been at IMG for a bit and I'm assuming you were there through COVID. I guess I'm wondering how would you say things have changed for kids since COVID has been less prevalent?
See, okay, so I came here actually the year that COVID stuff kind of got lifted. I came September of 21.
Oh, okay.
And so right at the tail end of that.
Yep.
Um, I mean, I think I'm seeing what everyone else is seeing, like kids got used to being in their rooms
Yep.
and
Yep.
passing time in their rooms. So we've got like, I don't know if you've ever been here, but we have killer facilities here, honestly. And that's not a plug for IMG. I'm just saying we do. Like we've got a pool here that would rival any pool these kids could ever swim in. The huge
Nice.
TV. Yeah, so you would think like they should be out there, right? Like they should be out hanging with their friends. They have the time at night, they have all these things. And I just say, I think the biggest impact from COVID is kids got real comfortable doing everything online, obviously, and texting. And so again, we work on that. We have in-person meetings. Like when we have meetings, our kids put their phones up on the thing. They never have a phone with them. Like all the things to get better at communicating, I think is what we're working on all the time. And so I think, you see it, I'm sure, in your work every single day. Like it's again, it's back to the comparison thing, right? Like we see it all the time. Like, so we just ask them to put their phones away a lot when they're with us.
I think it's super helpful. I mean, we're definitely seeing a trend. I think eventually it'd be nationally of high schools really either banning phones or reducing phones and stuff like that. And I think it's wonderful. It gives kids a break. I'm curious, can I put you on the spot for a sec?
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
and ask, I mean, I would imagine as a coach, you come across lots of different things, and the one topic, no one ever wants to talk about is suicide. Unfortunately, suicide is a very real thing. And it is, right now, the second leading cause of death in young adults. And
Yeah.
so when you look at the population of like 15, so basically high school and college age kids, it's a topic that comes up and we sort of can't avoid it. I guess I'm wondering, if you had some words of wisdom or advice, if there was a player out there, maybe one of your players out there that had concern about a friend, friend disclosed to them, hey, I'm really on edge. I'm thinking about this, this, and this. What would you say to that one person? What kind of words of wisdom would you offer to that student?
Yeah, it's a really hard one. We talk to our kids a lot about this. Like
Good. Good.
best friends take care of each other. So it's emotional for me because we say this all the time in our office, like not on my watch. Like I'm not going to go through that in my program. And so we do talk to our kids about this. We do bring them in the office if we think someone's a friend of somebody that might be struggling. And we will say, like, if you're best friends, we need your help because we can see lots of things, but we can't always see the depth of what somebody's feeling. And so, I refer often. I refer often. That's all I'll say. And like the minute I think somebody needs a little bit of support, I refer because I think it's important, and I've lost people in my life to suicide. So, and I think kids they're short-sighted, right? Like they're getting disappointed, or they're not like reaching their peak level, or whatever it is that they want right now, right now, right now. And lots of conversations about that with our kids for sure. But yeah, to the safety point, like often and early, that's what I tell my kids. Often and early, you come see me often and early if you think somebody's struggling, and we will see if we can get them help.
I love that approach. I love that approach that that you guys are there and you make it really clear regularly, because so often that's not the case. And I think that when students feel like they don't have that opportunity, they don't seek it out, they don't look for it. But because these kids feel that from you guys, they're definitely more inclined to come to you. And as you said, I mean, this is way above their pay grade. It's not something they're used to at all. And they're certainly short-sighted. So when kids come across what they feel like is insurmountable, and these types of issues come up, they don't realize that this is something that will pass, but it's certainly something that they probably need some assistance getting through. So good for you guys for getting involved and being having sort of an aggressive approach toward it, because it's one of those things that you do have to push on, because kids tend to have that mode of like, well, I'll take care of this myself. She's
Yeah,
my.
yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Yeah, I think it's important for us just because, in a boarding school environment too, it's like a college environment, right? So we can see things in person that maybe a parent can't feel over the phone or whatever that might be. So I just feel like, that's why we're aggressive about it.
I appreciate it. I think it's amazing what you guys do. Well, Shannon, listen, thank you again for taking the time today. I know you guys are super busy. The topic of mental health and wellness is near and dear to me, obviously, and certainly want to have that open conversation and dialogue with people like yourself, just to be able to get point of view and perspective. And I feel like once these shows go off live and kids are listening to them, my hope is that even if there's one tip or suggestion or hint that kids pick up on, then we've done our job. So thanks again for making the time, and really, really appreciate you being here today.
Thank you. And thanks for everything you're doing. I really appreciate you having me.
Absolutely. Have a great day, Shannon. You take care.
All right, you too. See ya.
That's all for this episode of Normalize It Forward. May this conversation serve as a reminder that you are never alone in facing your mental health struggles. There are always people who can help. To dive even deeper into our journey of normalizing one of the biggest issues young people face, check out more episodes of the show at youareheard.com. It's UAREHEARD.com. Continue gaining access to the right tools, the best resources, and the most insightful advice to achieve positivity, mindfulness, and genuine happiness.